On a cold winter afternoon when the chilly wind rattled the windows of the New York Art Museum, Rosalind Frost was absorbed in making final adjustments to the latest exhibit. Her deep crimson scarf harmonized with the vivid colors of the surrounding modern art. During her 10 years as curator of this museum, she had become a universally recognized connoisseur of art. "Perfect," Rosalind whispered softly. It was the moment when the arrangement of the special Munch exhibition finally matched her vision. She pushed her glasses up the bridge of her nose with her fingertips and smiled with satisfaction. Rosalind's passion wasn't merely a profession but her way of life itself. Raised in a single-mother household, she had learned the wonder of art from her mother, Martha. Martha worked as an elementary school teacher during the day and as a waitress at night, never failing to show love for her only daughter. They lived in a small apartment in Brooklyn, and though they weren't wealthy, their home overflowed with love and laughter. "Rosalind, there's a call about the new Van Gogh exhibition," her colleague Jennifer peeked in from the office. "I'll be right there," Rosalind replied, taking out her smartphone. Waiting for her was a message from her boyfriend Jason, looking forward to dinner tonight. She couldn't help but smile. She had met Jason Hamilton 3 years ago at a fundraising event for the museum. Working at a famous investment bank in Manhattan, he was a man who attracted the attention of every woman present, but his eyes were fixed on Rosalind's passionate art commentary. Her intelligence and enthusiasm for art had captured his heart. "When you talk about art, it's like you're casting a spell," he said on their first date. Rosalind was captivated by his words. Their relationship developed smoothly. Jason praised her intelligence, and she loved his ambition and kindness. However, there was a shadow over their happy world: Jason's mother, Elizabeth Hamilton. Elizabeth was an unwavering presence in New York high society. Even after her husband's death, she dedicated herself to maintaining the Hamilton family's reputation and social standing. And she had clear expectations for her only son's marriage partner: a wealthy family background, perfect education, and appropriate social connections. Rosalind met Elizabeth for the first time 6 months after she began dating Jason. Dinner at the luxurious townhouse in the Upper East Side was filled with tension. "Rosalind, the place you grew up, was it Brooklyn?" Elizabeth asked, elegantly holding a silver fork. Her tone contained a hint of contempt. "Yes, the Bedford-Stuyvesant area of Brooklyn," Rosalind answered with pride. "Well, how interesting," Elizabeth's smile was as cold as ice. "A true lady never loses her grace in any environment. But that requires proper upbringing, doesn't it?" From that night on, Elizabeth belittled Rosalind at every opportunity. She constantly criticized her clothing, her way of speaking, and above all, her lack of proper family background. Sometimes subtly, sometimes blatantly, Elizabeth tried to make Rosalind feel she wasn't worthy of Jason. "Mother is just a bit old-fashioned," Jason always dismissed it. "She'll come to love you with time." But as time passed, the situation didn't improve. On the night of the proposal, Jason knelt down and presented a sparkling engagement ring. While Rosalind's heart overflowed with happiness, she also felt anxiety. It wasn't hard to imagine how Elizabeth would receive their engagement. Sure enough, Elizabeth's reaction to the news of their engagement was cold. While outwardly offering words of congratulation, her eyes couldn't hide her anger and disappointment. "Are you really ready?" "Becoming a member of the Hamilton family is a great responsibility," Elizabeth whispered so only she could hear at the engagement party. "Maintaining our social standing might be difficult for someone with your background." Rosalind trembled at those words but kept her expression neutral. "I love Jason, Elizabeth. And he loves me. That's all that matters." After returning home, Rosalind called her friend Ashley. After listening to her story, Ashley, a friend since college, made an unexpected suggestion. "Why don't you gather evidence? Record her true nature," Ashley said. "If she's acting in front of Jason, you need to show him the truth." Rosalind hesitated at first. But a few days later, when Elizabeth looked at her engagement ring and said, "It looks cheap, doesn't it?" she made up her mind. She began keeping her smartphone's voice recorder ready at all times, and occasionally had Ashley bring a small camera. Elizabeth's attitude only worsened. When Jason wasn't around, she removed her mask and hurt Rosalind with cruel words. "You're just a temporary whim. Jason will soon tire of you. I can't imagine someone as uncultured as you becoming the mistress of our house." Rosalind endured quietly, and continued recording. Deep in her heart, she feared the day when this evidence would be needed. But at the same time, she was preparing for the truth to be revealed. As the wedding date approached, Elizabeth's hostility increased. She interfered with the wedding plans, ignored Rosalind's opinions, and tried to cut down her family and friends from the guest list. Rosalind's patience was reaching its limit. The night before the wedding, Ashley squeezed Rosalind's hand. "Will you be okay tomorrow? Elizabeth might try something." Rosalind took a deep breath and answered, "I'll handle whatever happens. Tomorrow is Jason's and my day. I won't let anyone ruin it." The morning of the wedding was a perfect day with May's soft light pouring over New York. In a suite at the hotel adjacent to Central Park, Rosalind was preparing for her important day, surrounded by her mother Martha and her sister Caroline. "You look so beautiful," Martha said as she placed the final flower in her daughter's long brown hair. Tears glistened in her eyes. "Your father would have been so proud if he could see you." Rosalind gently squeezed her mother's hand. "It's because you raised us on your own that I am who I am today." "Ready?" Caroline came in with a champagne glass in hand. "Let's celebrate this special day. Be happy, absolutely." There was an implied meaning in her words. The sisters shared a concern that Elizabeth might try something today. But Rosalind smiled as if to shake it off. "Today will be perfect." The ceremony at the historic church overlooking Central Park was breathtakingly beautiful. When Rosalind entered on Martha's arm, in place of her father, all the guests stood up. Her pure white silk dress was decorated with delicate lace from the décolletage to the back, simple yet elegant. Part of the old lace was inherited from her mother's wedding dress. Jason waited for her at the altar. His eyes mixed with love and wonder, and his expression grew increasingly radiant as Rosalind approached. Meanwhile, Elizabeth sat in the front row with an icy smile. Her sharp observant eyes didn't miss even a slight wrinkle on the hem of the dress. When they exchanged rings and the pastor declared, "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the church filled with cheers and applause. Rosalind and Jason shared their first loving kiss as a married couple. The reception was held in a luxury hotel ballroom near the church. Under crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling, 150 invited guests exchanged congratulatory words with champagne in hand. Rosalind's best friend Ashley was busy moving around with a small camera. "To preserve the best memories," she said with a smile, though her eyes harbored vigilance. The early part of the reception went smoothly. Delicious food, heartwarming speeches, and blessings from close friends. Rosalind shone beside Jason. "Maybe everything will be all right," she whispered inwardly. However, as the main course ended and dessert was being served, Elizabeth stood up for a speech. She raised her glass of red wine high, drawing the attention of the venue. Rosalind felt a chill run down her spine. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for gathering today on this special day of my only son, Jason," Elizabeth began speaking in a refined voice. Her blue dress was perfectly tailored, and the diamond necklace at her throat reflected light brilliantly. "As a mother, watching my son grow up has been life's greatest joy and greatest trial," she continued. "Jason has always been my pride. His excellent grades at Harvard University, and his current brilliant career. He has always obtained the best." Elizabeth paused here, taking a sip of wine from her glass. When her eyes found Rosalind, there was a cruel light in her gaze. But to be honest, at first, I couldn't believe Rosalind was worthy of my son. Tension swept through the venue. Jason frowned, and Martha and Caroline straightened their backs as if to suppress their anger. She is, well, from a different world than us, Elizabeth continued, choosing her words. But gradually, a sharp tone began to mix into her voice. A woman from a poor family, without proper social connections, not knowing the manners of our world, inheriting the Hamilton name. Jason tried to stand up, but Rosalind gripped his hand and quietly shook her head. Her eyes held a light of determination. You are a worthless pauper. Elizabeth's voice suddenly rang sharply throughout the venue. My son deserves better. Jason should have married someone from high society. What will happen to his future by marrying someone like you? The venue froze, all eyes turned to Elizabeth. Ashley quietly kept her camera rolling. I have always given my son the best. The best education, the best opportunities, and the best connections. And yet he. Elizabeth's voice trembled with anger. She clutched her wine glass and slowly approached Rosalind. Oops. Elizabeth deliberately spilled red wine on Rosalind's white dress. She watched with satisfaction as the vivid red spread across the pure white silk. Red suits your cheap dress better. Voices of surprise and anger rose from the venue. Jason's face reddened with intense anger, stepping forward to stop Elizabeth. Martha stood up for her daughter, and Caroline was trembling with rage. However, Rosalind rose more quickly than anyone else. Red wine stains were spreading across the front of her dress, but a calm smile appeared on her face. The venue fell silent. Rosalind spoke quietly but in a voice everyone could hear, your performance is wonderful. But there's one more surprise tonight. She gave a signal to Ashley. Ashley lowered her camera and nodded slightly. In the silent hotel ballroom, Rosalind stood straight, showing no concern for her wine-stained dress. Elizabeth wore a triumphant expression, but there was also visible discomfort at Rosalind's calm response. Ashley quickly brought out a laptop and had a brief conversation with the staff to connect it to the ballroom screen. While the technical staff set up the projector, a tense silence dominated the venue. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to take a moment, Rosalind said calmly. Her voice did not waver and resonated throughout the venue. For the past 2 years, I have recorded everything I've received from Elizabeth. This is her true face. The color drained from Elizabeth's face. What nonsense! She began to say, but lost her words when images appeared on the screen. The first video was from a dinner party after the engagement announcement. Elizabeth, smiling at Rosalind, saying, someone with your background entering the Hamilton family is like a fairy tale. The next scene showed Elizabeth shopping for a wedding dress. Rosalind, a store at this level is beyond your budget, isn't it? Why don't you look for somewhere more affordable, she said mockingly. The footage continued, showing Elizabeth calling Rosalind a daughter of a pauper and uncultured woman, ridiculing her clothes and family, gossiping behind her back, and laughing with friends while planning harassment against Rosalind. She's just a temporary whim. My son will come to his senses soon, Elizabeth telling a friend. I can't imagine a vulgar woman like Rosalind touching our family's historic furniture. Voices of surprise and shock rose from the venue. Jason stared at the footage in astonishment, his expression changing to a mixture of anger and sadness. Most shocking was footage taken a few weeks before the wedding. Elizabeth was talking with a close friend in her living room. I'll completely destroy her at the wedding. I'll humiliate her in front of everyone and show my son her true nature. I already have a plan. The screen darkened, and the ballroom was again enveloped in silence. Only the sound of Ashley closing the laptop could be heard. Elizabeth stood trembling, trying to defend herself. These are edited videos. She cut my words too. That's enough, Mother, Jason said quietly but firmly. There was a coldness in his voice she had never heard before. Videos don't lie. Jason stood beside Rosalind and took her hand. Dear guests, today is a day to celebrate our marriage. But what we've just seen. I'm at a loss for words. He took a deep breath and continued, Rosalind, I'm truly sorry for what you've endured. Not knowing about my mother's actions is no excuse. I should have been more attentive. Warm applause began from the venue. The guests, one by one, stood up to show support for the young couple. Elizabeth stood isolated, receiving her son's cold gaze as she tried to return to her seat. But suddenly Martha blocked her way. Rosalind's mother, though small in stature, emanated an enormous presence at that moment. I worked desperately to raise my daughter alone, Martha said in a trembling voice. Her eyes burned with hot anger. I worked 2 jobs every day and cut back on sleep to give my daughter the best education. She grew into a kind, intelligent, and strong woman. Being called poor by someone like you is an honor to me. Caroline also stepped forward to protect her sister. We will never forgive you for insulting our family. The only value you have is your bank account and your bloodline. But true value lies in humanity. In that regard, you are the poorest person. Rosalind stood beside her mother and sister, placing her hands on their shoulders. My family is my pride. We may not have been wealthy, but we had love and respect. Jason grabbed his mother's arm and quietly led her to the edge of the venue. Mother, please don't bring any more shame on us, he said with a stern expression. You should leave now. Fear appeared on Elizabeth's face. Jason, you're throwing out your own mother. You hurt the most important person in my life, Jason answered calmly. This is unforgivable. We'll talk tomorrow. Today has been enough. Elizabeth took one last look around the venue and, unable to bear the many condemning eyes, silently headed for the exit. As she left, the tension in the venue dissipated. Rosalind's friends gathered around her, offering words of comfort and encouragement. Margaret Winston, the owner of the art gallery and Rosalind's boss, came forward. At 65, she was a respected figure in the art world. Rosalind, you are the treasure of my gallery, Margaret said forcefully. Your insight and talent are worth more than any family background. I respect your strength. Ashley embraced Rosalind's shoulders and whispered, you are incredibly brave. To collect all this evidence while remaining so calm. Jason returned to Rosalind. His face showed deep regret, but also determination. He knelt before everyone and took Rosalind's hand. Rosalind, I deeply apologize for my mother's actions, his voice trembled with emotion. You are the most wonderful woman I've ever met in my life. I profoundly admire your strength, intelligence, and the dignity you showed today. He took a deep breath and continued, from now on, I promise to put you and our family first and protect you. I will never allow what you've endured to happen again. If you'll forgive me, I want to start over from today. The ballroom fell silent, all eyes on Rosalind. Her dress still bore the red wine stain, but it didn't diminish her beauty and dignity. Rosalind gently held Jason's hand and helped him to his feet. You have always been by my side, she said quietly. I won't blame you for your mother's actions. Today has been a difficult day, but let's walk through life together from now on. She paused for a moment and looked at Jason earnestly. However, mutual respect is essential in our relationship. Your family and my family should be equally cherished. If you can promise that, I'll gladly accept a new beginning. Jason nodded and answered, I promise. They embraced, and warm applause erupted from the venue. Near the distant exit, Elizabeth gazed at this scene. A tear streamed from her eye. For the first time, she seemed to understand the magnitude of the wounds her actions had caused. About an hour after the wedding reception resumed, many guests were already eagerly discussing what had happened. The band began playing again, and several couples started dancing on the dance floor. Rosalind was led by Ashley and her sister Caroline to a hotel room to change her dress. "Did you see her face?" Caroline said with satisfaction. "She looked like she'd been struck by lightning." Ashley laughed softly. She never dreamed her actions were being recorded. "That footage made full use of my documentary production experience." Rosalind smiled quietly as she changed into another white dress. This dress was simpler but still did not diminish her elegance. But this might have destroyed Jason's relationship with his mother. "That wasn't my intention. He'll understand someday." Caroline placed her hand on her sister's shoulder. "This was necessary. To protect you." When the three returned to the venue, Jason was waiting for them. His eyes were red and looked tired, but a warm light returned when he saw Rosalind. "You look beautiful," he said, seeing Rosalind's new dress. "But you're beautiful in anything you wear." He took her hand and led her to the dance floor. As the band began playing a slow-tempo song, they started dancing quietly. "I want to apologize about my mother," Jason whispered in her ear. She returned to her room at the hotel. "Tomorrow, we need to have a serious conversation." Rosalind rested her head on his shoulder. "You don't need to apologize. I love you. That's all." "But I was turning a blind eye," pain mixed in Jason's voice. "I knew my mother was treating you that way, but I downplayed it." Hush," Rosalind gently placed her finger on his lips. "Tonight is our night. Let's think about other things tomorrow." Watching them dance, Martha savored her daughter's happiness. Beside her, Margaret Winston sat quietly. "You have a wonderful daughter," Margaret said. "In my long career, I've never met anyone who combines talent and humanity like her." Martha smiled proudly. "Thank you, Margaret. She is my pride." As the night wore on, Rosalind and Jason began saying goodbye to the guests. Tired but with happy faces, they talked about their honeymoon in Hawaii starting tomorrow. At that moment, a figure approached from the edge of the venue. It was Elizabeth. She had already changed from her evening dress to a modest suit. Her face wore an expression Rosalind had never seen before. It was guilt and shame. "Jason." "Rosalind," she said in a small voice. "Please let me say just one word." Jason looked coldly at his mother. "Enough for tonight, Mother. Let's talk tomorrow." "Please," Elizabeth's voice trembled. "Just 1 minute." Rosalind placed her hand on Jason's arm and whispered, "It's okay." She turned to Elizabeth. "Go ahead." Elizabeth took a deep breath. I won't make excuses. I know there's no excuse for my actions." She hesitated for a moment. "I hurt you, insulted you, and tonight, tried to ruin your special day." She wiped away a tear. "I wasn't thinking about my son's happiness. I was only thinking about my own vanity and pride. I ignored that you love my son, and that my son loves you." "Mother." Jason began, but Elizabeth raised her hand to stop him. "No, son. Listen. I want to apologize to Rosalind." She looked straight into Rosalind's eyes. "I sincerely respect your courage and dignity. Despite my behavior, you always maintained your grace and showed true strength. That is, perhaps something I should learn." Elizabeth took a small box from her bag. "This is a token of my apology. You have no obligation to accept it." "But..." Rosalind quietly received the box and opened it. Inside was a delicate antique brooch. Small diamonds and sapphires sparkled beautifully. "This was passed down from my grandmother," Elizabeth explained. "It has been given to Hamilton family brides for generations. I should have given it to you at the time of your engagement." Rosalind was at a loss for words. She stared at the box, then looked up at Elizabeth. "Give me time," Rosalind said quietly. "What happened tonight cannot be easily forgotten. I don't know yet if I can forgive you." Elizabeth nodded. "Of course. I understand that." She stepped back a little. "I sincerely wish for your happiness." She turned to her son one last time, said, "I'm sorry, Jason," and quietly left. The venue became quiet again. Jason put his arm around Rosalind's shoulder and asked, "Are you okay?" "Yes," Rosalind answered softly. Complex emotions were swirling in her heart. Anger, sadness, and a strange sense of relief. "But I can't forgive her right away." "Of course," Jason nodded. "Take your time. We have time." That night, in the hotel suite, Rosalind and Jason lay quietly. The fatigue of the long day enveloped them, but they also felt anticipation for a new beginning. "The wedding was different from what we imagined," Jason said, gently stroking her hair. "Yes," Rosalind smiled. "But I think our relationship has become stronger. Now that the truth is out, we can make a fresh start. As for my mother, let's take time to resolve that," Jason said. "She needs to change. And I need to be more resolute." "Your mother is a stern person," Rosalind said, looking at Elizabeth's brooch. "But maybe she has her own way of loving. It's just become distorted." She placed the brooch on the bedside table. "From now on, we'll build our family. Your family and mine. And someday, our children. In that family, everyone will be respected and loved." Jason squeezed her hand. "Our children will never experience what happened today." "Yes," Rosalind agreed. "I want them to grow up in love and understanding." 1 year later, Rosalind sat on the terrace of their new Manhattan home, enjoying morning coffee. This view overlooking the Brooklyn Bridge was chosen by her and Jason together. They wanted a new place that was neither in the center of high society nor in Brooklyn where Rosalind grew up, but a place just for the two of them. "Here's a reminder about the proposal," Rosalind showed Jason, who had just entered, a poster for a local artists' exhibition. It was the first result of the new artist support program she had established. "Amazing, the first solo exhibition for an artist you've nurtured," Jason put his arm around his wife's shoulder and said proudly. He had developed a warmer expression than before and had begun adjusting his work hours. "I'll definitely go." Their married life was much happier than many had predicted. The events of that wedding became a catalyst for deepening their bond. Jason sincerely respected Rosalind's talent and passion, and she loved his sincerity and courage to grow. "I had a call from Mother," Jason said, sipping his coffee. "She wants to invite us to dinner next week." Rosalind thought for a moment before answering. "That's fine. But I'd prefer a restaurant rather than her house." The relationship with Elizabeth was being repaired slowly, over time. After that night, Elizabeth began seeing a psychological counselor and confronting her controlling personality and tendency to judge others. She was trying to change her attitude toward Rosalind. It wasn't easy, but the desire not to lose her son motivated her. Her position in society had been greatly shaken. Many old friends couldn't forget what they saw at the wedding and began avoiding her. The Hamilton family reputation, built over many years, was damaged in a single night. That reality prompted deep introspection in Elizabeth. "She has changed," Rosalind acknowledged. "Not perfectly, but she's definitely trying." A few months ago, Elizabeth took the unexpected step of inviting Rosalind's mother Martha to a meal. The two mothers were initially tense but gradually found common ground in their love for their children. It was a small step, but a meaningful one. "Oh, by the way," Jason suddenly said as if remembering, "you said there would be a call from the doctor today, right?" Rosalind smiled and gently placed her hand on her abdomen. "Yes. But I already know the result." They had begun thinking about having a child a few months ago, and recently, happy signs had appeared for Rosalind. Their family was about to grow. That evening, a package arrived from Elizabeth. When opened, inside was a beautiful antique miniature cradle with a note attached. If the rumors are true, this is for the new life born into the Hamilton family. It's a replica of what Jason used. Please accept it as a new beginning. Rosalind smiled and picked up the cradle. Over the past year, though her relationship with Elizabeth couldn't be said to be fully repaired, there had been a movement toward understanding each other. When they visited Elizabeth's house for Christmas dinner, she handed Rosalind a small box. Inside was another antique brooch, inherited from her maternal grandmother. "This is to be passed down to the next generation of Hamilton women," Elizabeth said, giving a meaningful glance toward her daughter-in-law's stomach. "Despite my foolishness, you have been the best daughter." Rosalind accepted the brooch and smiled. "The past is the past. Let's create a new family history from now on." Those words had deep meaning. That night, she and Jason revealed to the family that they were expecting twins. New life was healing past wounds and spinning hope for the future. Rosalind stood by the window, gazing at the twilight view of Manhattan. She had walked a long road. And now, with her passion for art, her loving husband, and the children to be born, she was about to begin a new chapter.